another social media giant, Twitter, is also making headlines in Nigeria. Authorities have suspended its activities in the West African country. The move came Friday, 2 days after the social media giant removed the tweet by the country's president, Muhammadu Buhari. The tweet had threatened to punish regional secessionists. Twitter said they removed the tweet for violating an abusive behavior policy. All right, let's bring in CGTN's Deji Badmus in Lagos. Deji, thank you for joining us here on Africa Live. Deji, how have Nigerians reacted to these developments?
Well, Richard, there's been widespread criticism of the government's action. People are not happy. Of course, you have those who are in support of what the government has done, but you put it on a scale, the majority of Nigerians, I would say, from what we have seen, have been very critical of that decision, saying that the government should not have resorted to a suspending. By the way, it's not a ban, it's a suspension. That's what the government says, an indefinite suspension. So it leaves open a window of a resolution to this. But let me also say this, Richard, that what I have noticed is that while all the mobile networks have actually blocked the Twitter page now on their networks, people are still able to access Twitter through other networks. I mean, other networks that are not mobile service providers, because I've noticed that. And then some people are using virtual private networks as well to circumvent the suspension. But all the same, people are critical of the government's decision, and some people feel, look, the government should have at least discussed with the social networking, with Twitter now, and try to resolve this rather than resort to this suspension, because as some people will tell you, it affects a lot of people. There are those who are using Twitter for their businesses. It affects them. It affects those businesses, especially young people. And then the country is currently battling unemployment, unemployment challenges. So it's a big talking point in the country, Richard, and that's understandable.
All right, Deji, important and compelling statements that you've made there about the suspension. Now, Deji, in the past, Nigeria's government has initiated efforts to regulate social media. Can you tell us more?
Yes. Of course, there was a social media bill in Parliament. Now, what has happened? I mean, and this bill started, lawmakers started debating this bill now right from 2019. But then that bill itself has been trailed by widespread criticism. So Parliament, I would say, is sort of slowing down there's a slow progress on that bill. Nothing has come out of it yet. So as we speak, there's actually no regulation of that such, in the country. But then you also have in the country the Cybercrime Act, which some people have actually argued takes care of certain abuses we see on social media. But then the government feels that Cybercrime Act does not go far enough, that we would need an a social media regulation bill. But up till this moment, we do not have that bill, and I think lawmakers are taking things easy with it just because of the criticism that has actually trailed that bill. So it's still in the works, nothing out yet. So we're left with the Cybercrime Act of the country. That's what the country has at the moment, and that's what it uses, so to speak, to deal with issues regarding social media abuse.
Deji Badmus speaking to us from Lagos. Deji, we appreciate that update and report. Let's leave it there for now. Moving on to discuss the situation and implications, we speak to Samson Itodo. He is the executive director of Yiaga Africa, a civic and social organization. Thank you for joining us, Samson. Thank you. Welcome to Africa Live. Let me begin by talking to you about the number of people in Africa using social media. It has risen exponentially in the past couple of years, offering both promise and perils for the continent. Can you tell us more?
Well, thanks for this very topical conversation. You know, demographically, Africa has a population of 1.3 billion, but mobile penetration is about 33%, and it's the lowest across the world because the average internet penetration across the world is about 74%. If you look at Facebook, Facebook has about 58%, the highest on the continent, followed by YouTube with 24%. Twitter has 11%. But if you look at the benefits of social media, you look at the contribution of the tech sector to GDP of nations on Africa is proportionately high. If you look at building social cohesion, promoting accountability, you know, social media has become that space where citizens engage. Is a tool for both direct and deliberative democracy. But what you have seen is the state clamping down and trying to regulate these platforms just to escape accountability. In 2020, there are about 29 countries that shut down the internet across the world. 12 of them are in Africa, 12 from sub-Saharan Africa, and 2 from North Africa. Ethiopia alone, you know, has had the highest number of shutdowns. And you ask, why do you have governments responding in this manner? No doubt, these social media platforms have been tools to propagate hate speech. You can see vaccine hesitancy and the misinformation, you know, just around the vaccines and the COVID-19 vaccines. DRC is returning 1.3 million doses of the AstraZeneca vaccine because of misinformation. Yes, these platforms have been used, but I tell you, if you weigh the cost benefits, the benefits of these platforms have been so high on the continent of Africa over and above the costs.
All right, Samson, to your point, how do we strike a balance then between unrestricted digital media and limiting messages that are potentially dangerous? In other words, how do we achieve a conducive digital ecosystem? Samson?
Well, I think it's important to stress that this is one conversation that has generated a lot of controversies in contemporary political discourse. And it's about this non-governmental regulation of this space. The whole idea that absolute free speech is tenable, it's unsustained. There has to be some regulations on on free speech, particularly speech that threatens peace, and when there's a threat of harm. And when you have those kinds of messages, incendiary and hate speeches on these platforms, the platforms need to rise to the responsibility of regulating and deleting those content, harmful content online, because we've seen how they've been used for political instability across Africa. Look at what happened in Nigeria and the fact that the president, you know, banned the use of Twitter. Totally unacceptable. It's an encroachment on the constitutional rights of citizens because you've banned a platform that citizens use, you know, to engage the state. And these forms of oppression and repression needs to be resisted. But the platforms have a responsibility because Facebook has over 200 million users or subscribers in Africa. Look at Twitter. So the kinds of norms that regulate these platforms can't be the same norms that regulate, you know, smaller platforms. They are playing in the public space. And so it is inherent on them to institute mechanisms to regulate, you know, the use of their platforms to propagate hate speech. And the action taken by Twitter, whether in US or in Nigeria, is welcomed because our political actors cannot use their position to propagate hate speech at the expense of our collective peace as a people.
All right, Samson, let's leave it there for now. Oppression and repression must be resisted. We appreciate your perspective, Samson. Thank you for joining us on Africa Live.